Recently I made a video about how to be a better friend if you are neurotypical and you have autistic friends and you want to learn how to accommodate for them more. Quite a few people in the comments then asked me how to be a better friend if you are the autistic one in a friendship, and initially this kind of made me sad. I eventually realised that it was the implication that being autistic makes you a bad friend and you need to change the way that you socialise with people. But to me, when I think about that, that's just the concept of masking, and that's really harmful. It's understandable to seek advice if you're neurodiverse because navigating yourself in a neurotypical world is really tricky. When you look for guidance on these kinds of things or anything to do with being autistic, so much of the guidance is aimed at parents of autistic children. It's like people forget that autistic children grow up to be autistic adults. So although it is possible for me to teach you how Aulistics socialise and it's possible for you to learn and imitate those behaviours, it doesn't necessarily mean that would be a healthy thing to do. I don't want to tell you how to be a good friend because making conscious choices about the way you conduct yourself beyond being a morally good person and being kind is just masking who you really are. One thing I will say, however, is that neurotypicals often say things that they don't mean, and there's lots of kind of phrases and day-to-day instances where you can learn what they actually are going on about. It's easier to include yourself in neurotypical conversations without masking just by learning these kinds of things. Stuff like the expected responses to questions like how are you, and when someone asks what are you doing tomorrow, they don't mean give them a list of exactly everything you're going to do from when you get up. I could probably collate a list of things that I have picked up on and realised the actual meanings for over the years, and it would be really helpful if you could share some in the comments below. But if you don't understand these or if you misinterpret meanings, that by no means makes you a bad friend. So let's talk about masking and friendships. Masking takes a massive toll on us, and a lot of people, especially those assigned female at birth, mask from a very early age. It's such a big reason of why we go undiagnosed for so long, because we are punished for our neurodiverse traits more so than boys. So when you ask me how do I be a better friend, do you actually mean how do I be a better friend, or is it just how do I be more palatable to neurotypicals? Do you want to be kinder, more considerate, or do you want to just act in a way in which you'll be accepted and understood by neurotypicals? It's not you that has to change there, it's holistic understanding. You should be accepted for your behaviour, and that doesn't have to change, especially if it is detrimental to your health. So if masking makes you fit in easier with neurotypicals, why shouldn't I just do it? Isn't that the easier option? Most AFAB neurodivergent individuals receive their diagnosis in young adulthood, often soon after starting college, when their symptoms become increasingly more bothersome and difficult to hide. So already from a young age, masking is something that stops you from getting the diagnosis and treatment that you deserve. But when you know you're autistic, can you not just mask to make it easier? Autistic people who mask more show more signs of anxiety and depression, and the strategy may even be linked to an increase in suicidal behaviours. So how does that happen? Why does it make us feel so bad? Masking can include suppressing the kind of behaviours that people think are weird but we find soothing, like stimming and our special interests. Additionally, it can hinder the development of authentic identities. So many autistic people feel like they don't know who they are. If they've been masking for so long, it can be a real journey to try and figure out what kind of things you like and who you are as a person. Masking requires a lot of cognitive effort, which is draining, and it can lead to autistic burnout and exhaustion. And when autistic people engage in masking, they experience a heightened sense of stress. The act of masking sensory difficulties as well can lead to a lot of anxiety, and this often presents itself as a form of social anxiety. Constantly suppressing your natural responses to different sensory experiences creates a lot of tension. So what kind of things are included in masking? Am I masking now? Nearly all the time, especially now that I'm in front of a camera. I will be masking so many of my autistic traits that you would probably pick up on more if we were in a room together. And they would be even more noticeable if I was on my own or in a room with a very close friend. Examples of masking include imitating facial expressions, rehearsing and preparing scripted responses, imitating gestures and body language, restraining stimming, and refraining from talking about interests. So we know what masking is, we know that it's bad, but I struggle making and keeping friends. Surely I have to mask. It can be really hard coming to understand that you are masking or you want to unmask, and the entire journey is such a big and personal thing to everyone. It's important to remember that you're not the problem, you don't need to change. We need neurotypicals to be willing to learn, non-judgmental and understanding. They need to be welcoming of our differences and listen to our challenges. Using compassionate and inclusive language, they need to create a space where autistic voices can be listened to. Our challenges need to be acknowledged with empathy, and our achievements need to be celebrated with genuine appreciation. If you treat us with respect, dignity and kindness, maybe you'll be lucky enough to be friends with one of us. But I don't understand neurotypical people. How can I be friends with them? That's okay. You don't have to understand people to be friends with them. You can still be compassionate and admit that you sometimes might not get it. People often get upset about things that I really cannot comprehend. I don't understand why they've got upset about it, but I can acknowledge that they are upset and offer myself just to be there for them. Your purpose as a friend is not to give guidance. You are not there as like a therapist, and obviously if you can give advice as a friend, that's so lovely, but being a friend is for hanging out, it's for sending memes, it's for playing Fortnite. Your brain being wired differently and not always understanding why they feel the things that they do and why they do the things that they do differently to you doesn't mean that you can't experience that friendship together. But here's why we're the best friends, and why any neurotypical person should be lucky to know us. You should be lucky that you're breathing the same air as us right now. Autism is so often spoken about in terms of deficit, but it's so important to remember all of the positive things that come with us too. Despite what lots of people think, we can be really empathetic, we are really creative, and we have so much to say. You will learn the most amazing things if you get to listen to an autistic person, and it should be a privilege to hear them talk about the special interests. I have friends with the most incredible memories. I have friends that can tell you studies about subjects that they are so passionate about. I have friends that can tell you about all kinds of animals, and I can tell you so much about James Bond. It's likely that with the experiences we've had growing up autistic, we've experienced things like social isolation and lots of really shitty feelings. We're really understanding and empathetic, and we probably got some advice, or just we can talk to you from a place of genuine understanding. Also, we are funnier than neurotypicals. This is not opinion, this is fact. So back to where this all started. Let's just take this back a step. How do you be a good friend as an autistic person? We often go searching for advice on making friends and keeping friends as autistic people, because in this society where neurotypicals are ruling the world and with the way that perceptions of autism currently are, it can be really difficult. It's often so much easier to make friends with neurodiverse people, and you'll often find that we just sort of gravitate together. We're like weird autistic magnets that will just find each other before we might even know we have the diagnosis. But regardless of who you're making friends with, you don't need to change anything about yourself to be a good friend. As long as you're being kind and being yourself, you are doing a good job. Learning meanings behind common actions and phrases by neurotypical people can make it easier to make and keep friends with them, along with having open and direct communication about everyone's needs and wants, but you shouldn't have to mask. Sometimes there can be a bit of a barrier between your understandings, but as long as everyone is willing to listen, you'll be alright. And if things don't work out, just know that you deserve people who love you for who you are and the wonderful friendship you can offer as an autistic person. Thank you so much for watching this video. My last couple of videos were aimed more towards like neurotypical people and how they could help autistic people or better understand us, but I'm really glad that other autistic people could like relate to it and found some things that were useful. I feel like there was a really positive discussion going in the comments. There were a few things people said that made me so happy that I could be helpful. So please feel free to share this video with anyone that you think might benefit from it, or put anything down in the comments that you think could be helpful to anyone that is reading this, whether neurotypical, neurodiverse. I was going to say anything in between, but there's not, is there? I've also put some references in the description to some of the articles and studies that I used to make this video. Goodbye. I'll figure out how to end these eventually.